The foundations of our relationship were shaky from the start, but it wasn't until after we moved in together that the cracks truly began to show. For almost 5 years, I was with Daniel, a man I thought was my forever. But things took a turn when we started sharing a home. I, 26, and he, 30, found ourselves in a downward spiral that ended in a betrayal I can't forgive myself for. Initially, living together was supposed to bring us closer, but instead, our differences became glaringly obvious. He disliked my messiness, while I found his emotional detachment unbearable. We'd have long talks, make promises to change, and for a week or two, things would improve. But soon enough, we'd fall back into our old patterns. I'd stop obsessively cleaning when I saw no effort from him, and he'd retreat further into himself, making me feel more like a roommate than a partner. Every time our lease was up for renewal, I'd ask if he wanted me to move out, hoping he'd be honest about his feelings. He'd always plead with me to stay, promising change, even talking about buying a house together. But these promises were as empty as our relationship had become. 3 times, he dangled the dream of homeownership in front of me, only to back out at the last moment, leaving me emotionally wrecked and disillusioned. 6 months into our latest lease, Daniel dropped a bombshell. He didn't want to live with me anymore, but insisted I stay until the lease ended. For the next half year, I tortured myself, wondering who would replace me in our bed and what he was doing when he wasn't home. We still kissed each other goodbye before work and exchanged hollow, "I love yous." But the intimacy was gone. We were like strangers sharing the same space. In my emotional turmoil, a coworker, Jake, started showing interest in me. Feeling broken and convinced that my relationship with Daniel was essentially over, I made a terrible decision. I slept with Jake. It was a brief and regrettable moment of weakness, driven by my need for affection and validation. When Daniel, in a rare moment of vulnerability, told me he didn't want me to leave and apologized for his behavior, I confessed everything. Daniel was understandably devastated, but after a few days of silence, he decided we should try to work things out. For the next year, I did everything I could to make it up to him. I walked on eggshells, trying to be the perfect partner, but the guilt gnawed at me, and our relationship remained strained. For months ago, I had to temporarily move back home to take care of my family. Daniel and I promised to stay in touch and work on our relationship from a distance, but halfway through my stay, he ghosted me. No calls, no texts, nothing. It's been almost a year since I last heard from him. The silence is deafening, and the guilt is a constant weight on my chest. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a photo that took my breath away. It was Daniel, smiling broadly, his arm wrapped around a woman who looked eerily familiar. As I stared at the picture, my heart pounding, it hit me. She was our mutual friend, Lisa. Lisa and I had always been close, but she had mysteriously disappeared from my life around the same time Daniel started distancing himself. Determined to get answers, I reached out to another mutual friend, Sarah, who reluctantly confirmed my suspicions. Daniel and Lisa had been seeing each other for months before our breakup. The emotional detachment, the coldness, it all made sense now. Daniel had already moved on emotionally, while I was desperately trying to save a relationship that was already dead. The revelation shattered me. I felt betrayed, not only by Daniel but by Lisa, someone I had considered a friend. The guilt I felt for cheating on Daniel was now mixed with anger and a profound sense of betrayal. I realized that Daniel had manipulated me, making me feel solely responsible for the downfall of our relationship while he was secretly involved with someone else. Unable to hold back, I confronted Daniel. I sent him a long message, pouring out my feelings of betrayal and hurt. I told him I knew about him and Lisa and how their actions had made me feel. His response was brief and cold. He claimed that he and Lisa only got together after we broke up, which I found hard to believe. The timeline didn't add up, and deep down, I knew he was lying. The months that followed were a blur of emotional chaos. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on anything. I was haunted by memories of our relationship and the betrayal from both Daniel and Lisa. The pain was unbearable, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to find some way to cope with the overwhelming guilt and anger. Therapy was a painful but necessary process. My therapist helped me unpack the layers of guilt and betrayal, and slowly, I began to understand that while my actions were wrong, they were a symptom of a deeply flawed relationship. Daniel's emotional manipulation and betrayal had driven me to a breaking point, and while it didn't excuse my infidelity, it put things into perspective. Healing was a slow and arduous journey. I cut off all contact with Daniel and Lisa, blocking them on social media and deleting their numbers. I focused on rebuilding my life, finding solace in small victories. I reconnected with friends and family who provided much-needed support and understanding. Months later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Lisa. She apologized for everything, admitting that her relationship with Daniel had started before we broke up. She told me that Daniel had manipulated her too, making her believe that our relationship was over long before it actually was. She confessed that she was leaving him because she realized he would never change. Lisa's confession brought a strange sense of closure. While it didn't erase the pain, it validated my feelings and helped me understand that I wasn't the only victim of Daniel's manipulation. I forgave Lisa, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to let go of the anger to move forward. As I move forward, I carry with me the lessons learned from this painful chapter of my life. The guilt still lingers, but I am learning to forgive myself. I know I will never repeat the mistakes of the past. Trusting again will be hard, but I am determined to build a future where I can find happiness and love, free from the shadows of betrayal. In the end, my story is one of betrayal, guilt, and emotional turmoil. There is no happy ending, just the raw, painful reality of a love that was never meant to last. But through the pain, I have found strength and resilience. And as I navigate this new chapter of my life, I hold on to the hope that one day, I will find peace and rebuild the pieces of my shattered heart.